Alright, I want to start this video by saying that there is more than one way to analyze data. Yes, that's right. Now, unfortunately, that goes against the current hegemony of science, but in fact, it's true. And on the metaphysics level, or the ontological level, the nature of being level, there are 4 ways to analyze data, pretty much any data. And those 4 ways are monism, dualism, idealism, and physicalism. So, I think that one of those ways is better than the other. I think that the monist perspective makes sense and the others don't. And so that's what I think. I don't know what you think, but that's what I think. And so that's a broad way to view things in nature or in reality. When you learn something new, or when you collect new data, there's different ways to analyze the data, and you can look at it this way, or you can look at it that way. So I don't know what you believe, but I tend to analyze things from the perspective of monism. And because I haven't always been a monist, I've started to analyze more and more different kinds of things from the monist perspective. Not just consciousness, but other things like, for example, politics. Now, I know what you're thinking. Whoa, that's really weird to base a political opinion off of metaphysics. and that's true. It is weird for this era that we live in today. However, historically speaking, it's not only not weird, it's common, it's expected. So I just wanted to start a discussion, a series of videos, I guess, on the discussion of analyzing politics from a monist, ontological perspective. Some political movements today, I could argue, are actually based on metaphysics or various ontological perspectives. Like, for example, when they say, oh, that culture over there creates its own version of ethics. So, if that culture over there collectively says that rape is okay, then in that culture it's okay to rape, even if the person being raped doesn't want to be raped. So that is called cultural relativism, or moral relativism, or ethical relativism. It's called relativism, and relativism is it's based on idealism, and the main argument used by these people is basically along the lines of, well, we don't have a solution, so there's no solution possible. And everything's just kind of relative. But idealism is ontologically speaking, it means that it's, well, idealism has to do with the category of consciousness and the category of, everything other than consciousness. And everything that's not consciousness is basically a subset of the category of consciousness. And, really quickly, that's wrong because, if you ask the question, well, how do you explain the color red? You can't really, an idealist can't really answer that. It kind of proves that there's a category that's outside of the category of consciousness, meaning that there is an objective reality and quite possibly an objective morality. So relativism is proven false by the question, prove the color red. I know it's pretty convoluted, but it's funny. Okay, just forget about it. We're going to talk about politics. Okay, we're going to talk about politics. So now, let's start the discussion about politics. Let's view politics from the lens of monism and even panpsychism, which is a part of it's the monist perspective of consciousness. Now, what does the topic of consciousness have to do with politics? Well, it's got a lot to do with it. And a lot of political movements are based on their ontological perspective and the accompanying perspective on consciousness, like the idealism example. The thing about panpsychism, or the collective consciousness, is that you've got this thing called the collective consciousness, or the collective mind, or whatever, a million words for it. And this collective spirit influences people and is influenced by people. And the changes occur via levels or amounts of unity and disunity, or coherence versus decoherence, or cohesion. You get the point. The general concept in the context of politics would be that you either want to influence the collective consciousness through politics. That's kind of the strategy, is to influence the collective mind through particular policy or movement, political movement. So, would you rather create more unity in the collective mind, or would you rather create disunity in the collective mind? Well, from what I understand on the topic, there are movements which have done both. There are movements which have explicitly focused on creating unity in the collective mind, and there have been movements which have explicitly focused on creating disunity in the collective mind. So then the next question is, well, why would you want to create unity in the collective mind? Or even more interesting question is, why would you want to create disunity in the collective mind? And that really depends on what you want unified and what you want disunified, I guess. Now, I can see a group of people saying, we would really like a more of a collective strength in our group, but those other groups or those other nations over there, you don't really care about them so much. And if there's disunity in their groups, that's fine with us, just as long as our nation, our identity has more cohesion. And then another thing I could see happening is people saying, well, there are some similarities between all of the different groups, like all of the human groups, and wouldn't it be nice if there wasn't really a cohesion between individual groups, but rather a cohesion between all of the groups together? I could see that, and that happens. Both of those things happen, but there's a third point to make, which I think is more of a relevant issue. Let's say you have a prophecy in your religion, which predicts like the end times, like an end times prophecy that predicts an eschaton. An eschaton, which is basically a magical utopia where like no bad things happen. It just so happens that a lot of religions have exactly that. They have a prophecy which predicts some kind of eschaton happening in the future. The common theme for this prophecy, seen in many cultures, is basically this, okay? The world becomes a shitty place. Things get really messed up. And then all of a sudden, magical utopia pops into existence. And everyone lives happily ever after. Okay, that's basically the gist, if you are not well versed in eschatology. So, in that case, oh yeah, by the way, these religions are largely monist and believe in a collective mind. So, the Christian example involves a demon being awakened, well, a powerful, large demon being awakened, and then the eschaton arrives when the demon is cast down into hell, basically. First of all, a demon in the more authentic Christian sense refers to evil spiritual forces, meaning the collective mind. So a beast would be an analogy for a lot of people in the world thinking a certain way. The second point I want to point out is that let's say you're a religious person that believes in said prophecy, and you're looking forward to the eschaton. I mean, I would look forward to an eschaton. Uh, that seems like a natural human thing to do. However, believing in the prophecy um, means that you also anticipate the world to be a bad place first. And so, if you're thinking that the end times are kind of close, or maybe things are happening in the world which you think are accelerating us through this prophecy towards the eschaton, and the world's becoming like a worse off place to be, it's you really want that eschaton, but world's becoming a bad place, but oh man, the eschaton though, like like maybe we should fix the world, right? We should like try and improve things, but also like, yeah, but the prophecy says that bad things will happen, and then eschaton, right? So the thing is that if you are a religious person and you believe in said prophecy, and you see the world becoming a crappier place, then really there's little to no motivation to actually improve things, because you're thinking that oh well, I'm gonna get like raptured or whatever, and all those unbelievers, they get what's coming to them. So there's no motivation at all. So in that aspect, okay, so you might be like a good person, and you might want like cohesion in like your own little social circle, but overall you're basically an advocate for disunity, decoherence, less cohesion, mass confusion, demonic forces, because of prophecy. And that is the basis, I believe, for a lot of political movements today, and a lot through history. That's my take on it. That's my take. So there's the prophecy element to it. It's like, okay, yeah, it might be great. It might be cool to create unity in the collective mind, or create collective strength in the collective mind, but why? It's like a tool, but it's like a tool, so what's the tool used for? What is the end goal? Why is it that you would want to increase collective unity? Don't you want to bring about the end times? To bring about the end times, you'd have to create disunity if you believe in said prophecy. So, I think that most people want humanity to progress. I think that most people would like collective cultural unity and peace, and to live in a utopia. And I think that most people would like an increased standard of living, which means an increased level of technology, etc., etc. I think that most people kind of want that. However, a lot of people are I guess their strategy to get to that point is to make the world a shitty place, and then magically utopia will appear out of nowhere, and everyone will live in harmony all of a sudden. Now, I am a monist, and that means I believe in the concept of God, the monist God, in the sense that that is the name you give to the fabric of reality. First of all, you believe that there's an objective reality, and the fabric of said reality, the label you would give it, the arbitrary label you would give it, is God. Okay, the base substance of everything, you could call it a whatever you want. You could call it a quark or God, or whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's just a label. I'm not a dualist. I don't view God as an interdimensional space ghost. I don't believe in interdimensional space ghosts, by the way. First of all, because I've never seen an interdimensional space ghost. Second of all, because, well, that's dualism, and dualism is dumb. And thirdly, because the word interdimensional has no meaning. Like, when you say the word interdimensional, what is it that you're talking about? Like, so anyway, I'm a monist, but I'm not religious, because, even though I feel like I know certain things about reality, I'm really skeptical about people saying that they have supernatural powers, like they're a prophet, like they can see the future and stuff. Having a perspective of monism or any perspective in metaphysics at all does not really insist that you believe that person, that guy over there, whose name is Steve over there, is a prophet and sees the future, and he's given supernatural powers by God. No, completely separate. So, even though I'm a monist, like a Neoplatonist Christian would be, I'm not a Christian because, well, Steve over there, I don't really believe what he says. And what Steve says is that we have to make the world a shitty place, and then all of a sudden there's going to be a utopia. I don't know, Steve. I don't know, dude. What I would rather do is try to gradually improve things, and then not like hope that a magical utopia randomly appears, but like actually use logic and reason and strategy to have things progress over time. It sounds difficult. I know. It sounds difficult. It sounds more difficult than magical utopia. But the chances of you achieving some sort of utopia, I think, are a little bit increased if you go the other route. It's from my perspective, I see like world leaders out there. I see them as being highly religious and believing in end time prophecy and trying to bring it about. I see the general establishment as explicitly trying to create disunity in the collective mind. And amongst us little people, that's kind of like like a far out idea, but in certain cults, that's that's a normal thing. That's a normal thing, and I've actually uh, read about how um, government programs um, were made with that explicit intent, and so whether you believe that or not, it's you can't really argue with the fact that there's a lot of collective disunity. Whether or not you believe in a collective consciousness, you can't really argue with the fact that there's mass confusion and collective disunity.